Orders on time. I'm going to turn to Vice Chairman Brady.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. You mentioned options on a third round quantitative easing. Would purchases in third round be confined to Treasuries, or would other debt securities be purchased?
We have obviously made no decisions. The law permits us to purchase Treasuries and government agency securities, and those are the securities that we have purchased in the past, and I wouldn't want to take anything off the table at this juncture. But I want to emphasize again that there's really, in some sense, two steps here. The first is to determine whether we think that growth will be adequate to lead to further improvement in employment. And I think at the same time, of course, we'll be assessing the price stability mandate and the outlook for inflation. If we determine that further action is at least potentially warranted, then obviously we have a number of different options, and we'd have to consider each of them and the costs and benefits associated with them. But at this point, I really can't say that anything is completely off the table.
Well, I guess my more direct question is, long-term interest rates, other than financial crisis, we haven't seen this level since the 1950s. Do you really think that is holding back our economy?
Well, the question is, if additional stimulus is needed, could the actions that the Federal Reserve might take achieve additional financial accommodation, putting aside potential bad side effects or costs that might be associated with that? I recognize that rates are quite low, so that clearly is a consideration. I do think that we do have methods, we do have tools that would allow us to get further accommodation in the economy and provide some support. It's one thing, it's not quite the same thing to say that the problem of the U.S. economy is not low interest, is not lack of financial accommodation. It's a different thing, and it's not the same thing to say that and to say that, even if the main problems are coming from elsewhere, that the Federal Reserve might provide some support from using the tools that it has. But I do want to say, and I've said this before, that monetary policy is not a panacea. It would be much better to have a broad-based policy effort addressing a whole variety of issues. I leave the details to Congress, who's considered many of these issues. So I'd be much more comfortable if, in fact, Congress would take some of this burden from us and address those issues.
Well, I think that's the point I'd like to make. My belief is I wish you would take a third round of quantitative easing off the table. I wish you would look the market in the eye and say the Fed has done all it can, perhaps too much. And I wish you'd look this president and Congress in the eye and say it is time to do your job. Get your tax policy right, get your financial house in order, rebalance your regulation so that you're encouraging job creation, and mitigate the uncertainty and concern over the President's new health care law. I'm not asking you to say that today, but I wish you would, because back home on Main Street, I believe those are the elements that are holding this economy back. And until we get that right, no actions from the Fed will get this recovery moving in a way I think we would all be satisfied with. May I ask very quickly on Europe, a lot of concerns about what will happen with Greece as far as exiting the euro, what type of contagion will occur in Europe. Earlier, you said, or last October, you said the tools you believed are important are providing liquidity through the currency swaps, ensuring American banks are in strong financial condition, and being there to provide liquidity to solvent banks. Are there any other tools than that that you're considering should that contagion reach us from Europe?
No, you have a pretty good list there. We did the swaps, as you know. They were very helpful in reducing stress in dollar funding markets. They have been coming down quite significantly from a peak of about $110 billion down to now about $20 billion. So their need seems to be declining. I would like to emphasize that on the banking side, we have worked really hard to try to make sure the banks and the financial system would be resilient to shocks coming from across the Atlantic, including our stress tests, which have shown very strong capital positions and liquidity positions. Our reviews, our ongoing reviews of exposures of banks to Europe. So we are taking steps to try to make sure that we're as well prepared as possible in the financial system. And then, as I said in my remarks, the Federal Reserve retains broad-based authority to provide liquidity against collateral in the event of intense financial stress. That was retained in Dodd-Frank. And in its role as liquidity provider of last resort, the Federal Reserve stands ready to do whatever is necessary to protect our financial system.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Brady. Congresswoman Sanchez.